The Bulgarian Split Squat is one of the best unilateral lower body exercises to build functional strength and stability, to build muscle mass and size, and to build symmetry on both sides of the body. First things first, let's talk about the setup. So we need a stable, sturdy, elevated surface to put our foot on. So I'm using a plyometric box here. You can use a workout bench as well. They also have specific Bulgarian Split Squat attachments or standalone pieces. So if you have access to those, you can certainly use those, but you do not need them. A plyometric box or a workout bench will work just fine. Now, the second most important part of this is going to be the height of that elevated surface. So if we go too high with the elevated surface, what ends up happening is we put too much of a stretch on the hip flexor of the leg that's up on that surface, which ends up being the limiting factor. That's gonna prevent us from getting full range of motion in the split squat because the stretch is gonna be stopping us from getting that full range of motion. So we don't wanna go too high and we certainly don't wanna go too low. I have found the sweet spot to be around 16 to 18 inches. This still allows me to get full range of motion and get the most out of the exercise. So make sure the height is good, make sure your height is dialed in, make sure it's not too high. Next, we talk about foot placement. So first, let's talk about the foot that's gonna be up on the elevated surface. Now, I've seen people that have their toes up like this on the bench. I personally don't like doing that because already that puts this leg and this hip flexor in a stretch position. So I find that that inhibits full range of motion. So I like to have the foot completely flat on top of the elevated surface. We also don't want this foot too far up on the elevated surface. We want to have it hanging off slightly, which will allow us to get full range of motion as we go down. So if this foot's too far up, you'll see the shin touches the box and that's going to stop us. So have that foot right in the right place here on the elevated surface. Next thing is the distance away from the box of the leg that we're going to be isolating and working. If we hit a narrow stance, keeping our chest up nice and tall, we're putting more of a focus on the quad with this exercise. If we extend this leg out, so have a wider stance and then lean forward, so hinge the hips slightly and then lower down, we're putting more of a stretch on the glute. So we're targeting more of the glutes and hamstrings as opposed to the quads. Once you've decided whether you want to focus a little bit more on the quads or focus a little bit more on the glutes, get that foot placement locked in without weights in your hands. So make sure the foot placement's good here. Make sure that front foot is good. Hit a couple reps with just your body weight to make sure, see I was a little too far up there, to make sure you can achieve full range of motion on every single rep. Once you've established that foot position, then we'll have weights off to the sides. I like using kettlebells because the handles are high, so it allows me to get down, not have to go so deep to stand tall. So we'll grab the handles of the kettlebells, set the back, we're gonna engage the hamstring and glute on this front leg and stand tall. Now, as we get into the technique, there's a few things that I want you to focus on. Number one, I want you to focus on slow, controlled descents to really load up that eccentric portion of the lift. Number two, I want you to pause for a second or two in that fully stretched position to create more time under tension, to create more muscle damage, and to create more gains. Number three, I want you to focus on bracing when you're in the bottom, exhaling as you go up. And the last thing, make sure that your knee is never caving in at any point in time. Drive that knee out to engage the glute and to protect the knees on every single rep. And lastly, let's break down a few ways you can modify this exercise if needed. So the very first thing I want you to do to modify is start off by using lighter weight with this movement. There's no shame in using little baby pink weights as long as your technique is on point. The next thing we can do, which ties into using lighter weight, is just use one weight, which will allow us to have one arm out to the side for a little extra counterbalance. If you're struggling to use extra added weight, you can also just use your body weight. And lastly, we can regress this even further with our standard split squat. If you guys have any questions about the Bulgarian Split Squat, need help with technique, or if questions about anything else, feel free to drop those in the comments. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until the next video, I'll talk to you guys soon.